Howdy, y'all. Welcome, horror homies, to another entry for Horror Homies 2025. I'm DBZALLSTAR, or Steve if you prefer, and for this entry for October 2025, I wanted to focus on the 28 Days Later franchise. Now, this is a franchise that, for the longest period of time, we had no new content. But this year, 2025, we were able to be blessed with the release of the first of 3 planned sequels in the franchise. 28 Years Later was released in June 2025 in the US, released on Netflix September 17th, 2025, and 28 Years Later, the next entry in this planned trilogy, 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple, is due out in January. We have a third film planned, supposedly, according to Danny Boyle, the producer of these films, but it has yet to be greenlit, so I'm guessing it will depend upon the success of both 28 Years Later and 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple, which will be directed by Nia DaCosta, who also directed the underrated and stellar Jordan Peele produced Candyman 2021, originally 2020 but delayed by the pandemic. I'm really excited for that entry. It looks like it's going to be a different take on the franchise, which includes 28 Days Later, the original film from the early 2000s, 28 Weeks Later, 28 Days Later, Aftershock, released as a comic book graphic novel by Fox Searchlight Productions, and what I have before me, a 24-issue ongoing series released by Boom Studios in the early 2010s that takes place between the events of the original film, 28 Days Later, and the sequel film, 28 Weeks Later, which was the first film in the franchise, granted there aren't that many, to be produced by, but not directed by, Danny Boyle. So, I'm a big fan of this franchise. A lot of people mistake it for being a zombie film, even though these people who are going around taking bites out of others, getting violent, they're not zombies. They are infected. They are infected by what's known as the rage virus, which is quickly introduced in the opening moments of the original film, 28 Days Later. That film ends with a possible end of contamination of the rage virus in general, but then it appears again to run rampant in 28 Weeks Later, released a few years after the original film, starring Jeremy Renner, Idris Elba, and other wonderful cast members. I don't have all the cast members memorized, my apologies, but Cillian Murphy was one of the principal actors in the original film, 28 Days Later. Naomi Harris starred alongside him and was the pre-Michonne, because it predated The Walking Dead by a year in terms of release. The Walking Dead was released in 2003. 28 Days Later was released theatrically in 2002. So 28 Days Later actually preceded Michonne, whereas Celine has a machete, Michonne has a katana, but still many elements kind of crossover between the different zombie/infected genres within the horror overarching genre. I love 28 Days Later for the opening sequence, for the sense of dread and despair that you feel overcome with as our protagonist, again played by Cillian Murphy, Jim, exits the hospital and eventually finds himself in the company of the infected, only to be saved by Celine and a companion who doesn't last too long. Eventually, Jim and Celine are accompanied to another part of England. This whole film takes place in jolly old London for much of the first act of the film. And bloody hell, sorry Michael, fellow admin of the Omnibuds Cafe, had to at least a few times. They make their way to another area that has been broadcast on the radio as being safe. If you're familiar with horror elements and plot lines, obviously something goes awry and it all goes to hell rather quickly. But at the end of the day, we see the chance for the rage virus to subside and disappear into the annals of history before 28 weeks later takes place and the rage virus begins its march once again. So this year, 28 years later, revealed that the ending of 28 weeks later was able to be somewhat retconned or somewhat pushed back. Weeks is not said directly to be non-canon in this film, but the plot set up at the tail end of the film is not relevant. It takes place once again in England. We have a new cast of characters. Supposedly Cillian Murphy will appear in one of these 3 entries in this sequel trilogy rather, and it might be in 20 years later, the Bone Temple. Murphy's been seen on set. Boyle has said that he will make a return, and he's credited to have helped with the production of this film. This film is not necessarily a return to form because there are several elements that are different. 1, we see an evolution of the infected. 2, we see a group of humanity cut off from the mainland and see how they cope with having to deal with the rationing of supplies, with the evolution or de-evolution in terms of technology of their lifestyle. How a young boy seeks the approval of his father and community, but showcases a strong love for his mother and is willing to sacrifice everything to see that she is brought back to full health. It also features Ralph Fiennes, also known as Voldemort, in a significant role as Dr. Kelson. I don't want to spoil that. There are surprise forms for the infected. This has a lot of emotional beats. This has fast-paced action, but some slower, dramatic moments as well. I thoroughly enjoyed this film. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And as of yet, it has not decanonized the ongoing series. Well, formerly ongoing, the 24-issue series, 28 Days Later, collected in a series of it's 24 single issues. There are 6 trade paperback editions, collecting 4 issues each. There is this thick paperback omnibus edition. There was also a single hardcover released for Volume 1, but that was the only hardcover released, at least in the United States, that Boom Studios was willing to release. This focuses mainly on the aftermath for Celine following the events of 28 Days Later. It's 24 issues, and believe me, if you're a fan of the franchise, there are Easter eggs aplenty. If you're a fan of horror, there are Easter eggs aplenty there as well. And I think that Michael Allen Nelson, who also wrote Daemon and Hexed within the comic industry, did a great job of capturing Celine's personality. There are other characters that act as supporting cast or fellow protagonists. There are villains and antagonists that have, or at least may have, a connection to elements or people from the original film in the franchise. Throughout much of it, Declan Shalvey is shining with the artwork, and Sean Phillips of Criminal and Fatale provides many of the standard covers. Most covers came in 2s for each of the 24 issues of the series. So if you're looking for more 28 Days Later and you're chomping at the bit, no pun intended, between watching the original and 28 Weeks Later, you've just watched 28 Years Later and are hungry for the Bone Temple to release in January 2025, at least here in the US. At last look, you might be able to read these through Amazon's former Comixology service. There are ways to read this, but I'm going to express the legal route. Boom, Marvel, Disney, Sony, whoever it be out there who has the rights, it would be wonderful if you could reprint either the 6 trade paperbacks or this stunning omnibus, which is a little worn. It's exactly as I got it, but it was a little worn. I didn't pick this up when it was initially released. Got it used, and I'm proud to own this in my collection. I do have the single issues, I do have the 6 trade paperbacks, but they are in storage elsewhere and in a different setting. But I will showcase just some of the beautiful artwork we have here. Without spoiling too much. I really don't want to ruin any of the story elements, but originally this was retailing for $39.99. I think I paid a C-note for it, and I reread this every once in a while. It has yet to disappoint. I reread this in anticipation of the theatrical release of 28 Years Later, and I'll probably end up rereading it this month because it's October, and almost likely, even though I've already watched 28 Days Later 3 times this year, in 28 weeks twice, and now this twice, I'll probably re-experience it all over again. But I don't want to oversell it. I don't want these videos to be too gosh darn awful long. At the end of the day, make your choices. If you're looking for a story that's sort of zombie-esque, but it really focuses on the style of Infected that we are more acquainted with from games such as The Last of Us, where they're fast-running and there is no death element to transforming into these antagonists, if you want to call them that. 20 Days Later and all the entries in the franchise are well worth checking out. But if you've experienced any of these entries so far, if you're interested, if you have some other interest in zombies or Infected, please feel free to like, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. Follow me if you wish on Instagram at #1Animaniac. Leave a comment down below. Above all else, stay healthy, stay safe, happy October. Thanks for watching, and be well.